Welcome to ClearProp. In this episode, we will discuss how to choose the right flight school. Seasoned pilots will also talk about differences between flight training in North America and in the Philippines. Also in this episode is a discussion on the advantages of having a multi-engine rating, and also talk about flight simulation and its role in flight training. But before we start, don't forget to click on the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel.
ClearProp.
The ideal qualities of a good flying school would be a training provider, as I would call them, that would offer a complete package. They would actually take a student from the basic aircraft with classic instruments, introduce you to the glass systems that we have right now. I strongly advocate having stalls and spins and other upset maneuvers, including multi-engine training as well, and actual night flying. Not all the flying schools provide that, unfortunately, but those are very critical skills that the student should have to prepare them if they want to go to the airlines, if they want to have a long-term professional pilot career. One or two of the bad qualities that would keep me away from flying school would be, first, look at the aircraft. How it's maintained, the instrument panels, and how they're actually laid out. It would tell a lot about how the flying school is delivering its training to its students. It doesn't have to be a glass cockpit system from day one. But then again, if they would have actually a program that is more responsive to the demands of the industry right now, then I would be more receptive to that school.
There are some aviation schools that offer very low fees, but you have to be very careful because you're flying their aircraft, you're flying their airplane. If anything happens, it's your life. There are some, they don't use the proper fuel for the trainer for the aircraft. That's why the performance of the engine is jeopardized. And also, during the training, there are some whose instructors are slick. They have a lot of bravado. They do illegal things. There are aviation schools that they just write in the logbook the flying hours is like this, but the actual experience is not.
Flying schools need to basically invest in training their instructors. It's not about just getting a nice airplane. It's not just about having as many airplanes as you have or having the lowest price. The key to it all is the proper training of the flight instructors.
I think it's very important that the students get up in the air as soon as they can. Aircraft availability is very important. Runway availability is very important. Of course, the flight instructors are supposed to be there already as required by the authority. The students should be able to fly right away. So if you're a flight student and you're on the ground most of the time, then there's something wrong.
A lot of the pilots now typically will just get your CPL instrument rating, and then they'll go to some sort of rating school. They offer that. You pay X amount of pesos, get after X amount of time in a simulator, we give you the Airbus rating, you go on to the real plane. But then you don't have the experience to fly that. And like I've said quite often, yes, you do have an Airbus rating, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can fly the real airplane, really. You have to also realize that a lot of these establishments that offer that type of course are actually a money-making venture. It's a business. Why are you in that sort of business? To make money, period. See? Reliable as far as its quality of instruction, quality of the aircraft themselves, quality of the instructors, that sort of thing. It's the same as, okay, what kind of car am I going to buy? Do I buy a Honda, Toyota? Pretty much the same things. What are you looking for? Value for money, you're looking for quality, things like that.
In Canada, the standards for private pilot license all the way to the commercial pilot license is well established, and it is written specifically in the regulations as guidelines. So when you do your PPL In Canada, you have what we call a private pilot license standards. Basically, in that list of standards, you have the list of maneuvers that you have to do. Everything from, for example, forced landing exercise to a demonstration of a stall, incipient spin, cross-country. When the examiner sits down next to you, he or she will be going through that set of standards one by one, which is something that you don't find here.
Doing training in the Philippines and doing training in the States packed a lot of surprises on both sides. When we did the basic training here, there are a lot of things that you thought you already knew, you thought you already studied for. Back in the day, there was no YouTube, so everything was off the magazines, off the books, everything, you tried to read everything to anticipate the situations, but when you go out there and fly, there would always be surprises, always a new thing to learn. But when you fly in the United States, it's a little different because of the freedom of flying there. Flying there is like flying around with a family. Everybody kind of welcomes you. ATC is a little bit friendlier and a little bit more tolerant of you. You can do VFR flights and ask for flight following, and they're going to take care of you. Even the airline guys, most of them have airplanes where they live, so they're very tolerant and they encourage general aviation a lot.
The problems with pilot training in the Philippines actually at the moment is that there's a lot of archaic rules and regulations that aren't really designed to grow general aviation. What's actually happening here is they essentially skip steps. They actually go for your PPL, CPL in a non-complex airplane that doesn't have retractable gear or a constant speed propeller or what's considered a complex airplane, and then no multi-engine time, and then they're straight into an A320 simulator. And they come out of that with their type rating and technically, or what's on their license is a multi-engine rating. That is unusual. That shouldn't be the way that it goes.
You wanted to get multi-engine, right? Here in the Philippines, in order for you to get the type rating for multi-engine time, you have to be rated on that airplane. In Canada, for example, you can fly, for example, a Piper Seminole, right? Get 10, 11 hours on it, and then you get checked out for a multi-engine rating, regardless of what airplane you fly.
I would require applicants for an airline to have a multi-engine rating, if I had my way. Multi-engine aerodynamics are very interesting, and even with glass fly-by-wire systems in aircraft right now, it still does not eliminate the critical skills needed to control the aircraft in the event of an emergency. Or if you're in a situation that you have to pull all those skills in, let's say you're having a very strong crosswind landing at night, those things would actually come very useful in a way that you understand how the aircraft behaves. I would always tell the guys to fly with, even if it's a fly-by-wire aircraft, at the end of the day, it's just another airplane.
After my youngest daughter signified her interest in flying, of course, being a father, first, I want her to be in the best aviation school. Not only that, the safety record is as much as possible impeccable. And also, the price is also considered, but it's just secondary.
My daughter's taking up flight training right now. One day my daughter came up to me and said, I want to take up flying, and that kind of caught me off guard. And I said, are you sure about it? And she said, yes. I said, okay, we'll finance you up to your solo or your private pilot, and if you don't manage to kill yourself or probably enjoy it, then we'll talk about the next few steps. So what I did was that I planned out a program for her that's very similar to what I went through by getting her to the proper single engine training first, getting her actual night experience. We're going to be enrolling her for actual upset training as well, and a multi-engine program that's also lined up for her.
The interesting thing with simulator technology lately is that it's being used in so many ways, in so many areas, not just aviation. Simulators are an amazing tool.
When it comes to flight simulation, we actually use flight simulators as a tool for us to be able to introduce difficult scenarios or very, very life-threatening scenarios.
The military uses simulators because it trains pilots for events. And civilians using simulators for that sort of thing is just as effective.
A simulator is used to also practice proper crew resource management. So for you to be able to work with your first officer or your captain, for that matter, to be able to get all of this information and apply it there for any given situation. A simulator is a controlled environment for us to be able to introduce different scenarios and different situations.
It costs less to use the simulator. You can use the simulator in the dark. You can use the simulator if it's pouring rain. You can use the simulator if there's a typhoon outside. It doesn't matter. As long as you've got electricity, you can use the simulator.
The students usually get intimidated when they go inside an aircraft. But if they go inside a sim, they're more relaxed. Okay? They know that I'm not going to die here. Okay, so when you put the student in that situation and they're relaxed, and you show them that they can actually manipulate the aircraft, they can fly the aircraft. When they go to the real aircraft, then they get more relaxed than if they haven't tried it before. So when the student is relaxed, then teaching them is easier.
And that's why simulators at the initial stages are brilliant. And that's why when you look at in Europe, this MPL license they have, which basically takes somebody from zero time and gets them into an airline, simulators are key to that. And that's how good simulation technology has got these days.
To sum it all up, really, I had this mission, or it's what I would say, a pursuit for perfection. Because when you do something like that, you can achieve something that's called excellence, okay? Which is not a terribly bad thing to achieve anyway. If I make a mistake in an airplane, I die. That's the crude part of it. But you see, how many people, like I said, are willing to accept that responsibility? Not a whole lot.
So flying, whether it's in GenAv or airline transport, it's not something you do as a casual thing. You have to have this definite drive to get you to do it.
Every pilot starts out as a student pilot when he learns to fly. And great pilots never stop learning. Your pilot's license is not a diploma. It's a lifetime license to learn.